sometimes your best work isn't done in the workshop. Get to the top of this hill and I'll explain. Because sometimes when you've got a bit of a problem in the shop, the best thing you can do is get out of there, put a bit of distance between you and the problem, and be in a situation where all you can do is think about it. So to that end, I've escaped the workshop for a couple of hours. It's a lovely sunny day. I'm a little bit out of breath because that is a big hill. So I'm going to spend the next couple of hours just thinking my way through this problem until hopefully it goes away. It's not a major problem, it's just one of those things that could make or break the guitar, so it could be a major problem. Basically, right from the get-go, I'd intended to veneer the wings of the body and the front face of the headstock, and I've actually got some really nice figured maple veneer to do that with, and I think it will look good. However, I kind of like the way it looks at the moment as well. I really need to wrap my head a bit further around this. So I've been having to think about this on my way around. I also think it's quite useful to kind of break things down into smaller parts and think of those in isolation. To that end, I've been thinking about the headstock, and I want to put a logo on the headstock. I'm hoping to put a mother of pearl logo on, and I think for that to work I need some real contrast. So I don't think that's going to work with the stripes that we've got going on at the moment. So for that reason, the veneer on the headstock kind of makes a lot of sense. Obviously, if we left it plain maple, we're not going to have very much contrast at all with the mother of pearl. So that indicates that something else has to happen. But we can get to that at a later point. As far as the body goes, it's quite difficult. I actually really like mahogany, and I think it's a good contrast to the central section of the guitar, but I do think it would leave me quite limited in terms of what I can do with the finish. And if we are going to go with the maple veneer on the headstock, it makes sense to put it on the front of the body as well. Worst case scenario is that I veneer the body wings, don't like it, then have to take it off again. Probably steam off with a hot iron, wouldn't be too much trouble. If not, it's probably only about 0.6 of a mil thick, so we could sand it off very easily as well. Whew. It's quite a warm day today for a cheeky 7-mile stroll. I really enjoyed that, and I've had plenty of opportunity to think about what I'm going to do next with the guitar. And I've decided that I am going to go with the veneer. Worst case scenario is that I don't like it, I take it off again. But I think I am making the right choice. But before we can start that, we've got a few little bits and bobs that we need to finish off with the fretboard. And I think before I do that, I definitely need to go and have a shower. I'm absolutely minging. So I shall see you back in the shed. Okay, all showered and changed and ready to go again. Just by way of explanation, those sunglasses, I got to the car park, it was a really nice sunny day, so I reached into the door pocket of my car to get my Ray-Bans, and this is what I came away with. Absolutely gutted. I've had these, I must have had them 25 years. So I was really sad to see those go. They've been to some amazing places with me, done some incredible things with these sunglasses on, and I think that's pretty terminal. Might be in the market for some new Ray-Bans. There we go. So back onto this fretboard, there's a few little jobs we need to do on it before we can kind of move on to the next stage. First one is we need to cut it down at the nut. Second one is we need to offer it up to the neck and find out whereabouts the adjuster for the truss rod comes, because that's going to kind of be the end point of our fretboard. So we need to trim it down there, and then we also need to put a little bit of relief in where the truss rod adjustment nut goes. Having done all that, we'll then need to position it onto the neck, drill a couple of holes through fret slots, cocktail stick into the neck to hold it all in place. Pretty standard stuff if you've seen my videos before. However, I can't cut the ends off the fretboard just yet because the only marking for the center I have is actually cut into the end. So I'm just very quickly going to transfer that on to a pencil line, so we'll still have our center line once we trim it down. Like that. So now all we need, break out the bench hook and this fine tooth pull saw, and we'll get this trimmed off at the nut line. And up the other end, it's fairly straightforward. We've got this line here that marked the end of the truss rod adjuster. So if I set it up at the nut line at one end, I can simply mark this using that line as a reference. Put that line across. Just double check that. And that looks absolutely spot on. So next up, again, we'll just get this whipped down with the pull saw. Okay, so that's the little cutout marked out. I've actually marked this a little bit smaller than the cutout in the neck, because obviously it's a round wheel that's going to poke through there, so the radius is smaller at this point than it is lower down, and I hope that will just keep it nice and neat. The adjuster has actually got a very kind of square profile to it, so I'm just going to kind of nibble this out on the bandsaw, perhaps clean it up with a chisel and a file or something, and just make that a nice square cut so that this will fit in really snugly and hopefully will look quite nice. So we'll get this over to the bandsaw and get it trimmed off. That is absolutely spot on, and I think it's quite subtle as well. You can barely see the adjuster, so really happy with the way that that's gone. So there's a couple of little jobs left on this now. We need to get this pinned in position, and then finally we just need to sort out the fret dots, which hopefully won't take too long. In terms of pinning this, all I'm going to do is I'm going to drill 2mm hole through the fret slot at the first fret, and I've done that a little bit away from the center so I'm not interfering with the truss rod in any way. Stick a cocktail stick in the hole, and that's that pinned nicely in position at that end, and then we'll just come down the other end and again kind of diagonally opposing it. In fact, I'll go for one of these where there's not an inlay. And again, stick that pin in. And what that now means is we can take this fretboard on and off, and we've got those 2 pin locations, and we can just put it back on in exactly the right spot whenever we need to. So with that done, we can move the neck out of the way again, and then we can just concentrate on getting the side dots onto this. And I think what I'm going to do, because I think it'll be a nice look, is instead of putting the side dots in the center of the fret, I'm actually going to put them where these little inlays meet the top. Now, that will mean on some of them that your visual reference to where the transition of frets is kind of skewed towards the other fret. That might take a little bit of getting used to. I don't know, maybe it won't. Maybe it'll just be the most natural thing in the world and your hand will just fall where it needs to. So to get that started, I'm just going to kind of put a mark on the top of here where each of these markers falls. And then I've got my little marker jig for doing these, and I'll simply just clamp that to the fretboard with a spring clip, drill the 2 holes, insert. I'm going to use white plastic rod for this. Mother of pearl dots would have been nice, but I haven't got any, and for the size of them it won't make a huge amount of difference. Just super glue those in, the job should be a good one. Okay, so that's the fretboard pretty much done for the time being, so we can get this out of the way and start to have a look at these 2 body wings. Like I said, I don't actually mind the mahogany too much, but I do think it's a little bit plain, and basically any finish that I put onto here will kind of have to be darker than this to kind of make any difference to it. So that isn't really where I want to be with this. So I think I am going to go with the veneer on these. So the next step in the process is getting these prepped up for and putting the veneer onto them. And what I've got for them is this lovely little roll of kind of flamey / quilty maple. It is very, very nice. First thing I'll do is just get it unfurled and we can see what we're dealing with. And as you can see here, there is some absolutely beautiful figure in this veneer. I've got probably 2 meters of it, so there's way more than I need. So really it's now just a case of kind of selecting a couple of bits that will work nicely. And if I can, I'd like to use this as sparingly as possible because it is good stuff. So I'll just do some kind of quick trial and error. I think this does look a quite a nice piece. So we'll use this for the top wing, and the piece next to it actually looks really good as well. So we'll try that bit there. And this is quite hard to film, but I think that bit looks absolutely lovely as well. I think those are the 2 bits I'm going to go with. So we need to cut them out. Now you can buy specialist veneer saws. I have actually got one, but I don't tend to use it. I find as long as you're careful with a scalpel, you can usually get what you need out of a piece. And then I'm just going to put these on a little bit of sacrificial board, and I'm going to cut well away from these lines. Okay, so that's one cut. I'll do exactly the same with the other, and we can start getting the wings prepared. Okay, so I've pushed on a little bit off camera just to get this moving along a bit quicker. I've cut some stuff out, so I've cut some 3/4 ply cauls that we can use for clamping this. I've had to do this in 2 pieces because I didn't have a bit big enough to do it in one. Doesn't really matter, as long as I get some good clamping pressure on that bit, it'll be fine. And I've also cut some of this foam. Now this is an old camping roll mat. I've just cut it roughly to shape, and once I've got the glue on and the veneer on, I'll just clamp that on top underneath the caul. And the reason I do that, it evens out the pressure, which is a good thing, and also this won't stick as well to the veneer as this would, so if there is any glue coming through the veneer, it won't be a problem. Now, the sharp-eyed amongst you might have noticed that we cracked this ever so slightly when we were cutting it. It's not massive, and it's right on the edge, so I'm hoping that I can kind of shuffle this up enough for the worst of that to be out of the way, but it won't get it all. I don't think it's really worth kind of chucking this bit of veneer away for that little bit of a crack. I think with a bit of glue that will close up absolutely beautifully and it won't be a problem. And to make sure that we get as good a job on that crack as possible, I've got some of this tape here, and this is kind of specialist veneer tape, and it's usually used if you're book matching veneer. It will just stick the 2 bits of veneer together in a really tight join, and then you can just dampen it and it will peel off. And you just need to put a bit of moisture on it and then push it into position, and that will hold everything together until the glue's dried. Now these have come straight out of the thicknesser. There's a nice finish on top of this wood. The veneer is very thin, so realistically you don't want an uneven surface because that will show through the veneer. And if you're trying to sand this flat and you've got a bump underneath, you can quite easily sand through. So that does need to be prepped up quite well. But other than that, it's just a case of getting some glue on it. Again, I don't think the choice of glue is that important. I'm going with the trusty Titebond, but any kind of PVA wood glue would be a good solution. Okay, so there's those 2 glued up now. Did take a little while to do them, but I think it's gone down okay. We'll have to leave them for a couple of hours just for that glue to dry up a little bit before we can check, but I'm sure it will be fine. Okay, so they're out of clamps now and they've gone on very, very well, and hopefully you can see just how nice this maple is. I think that looks absolutely stunning, so I'm really happy. But that leaves us a couple of jobs. First off, we need to get rid of this little bit of paper tape that I put over the patch, and secondly, these need trimming off. I'm going to leave the trimming till the next episode because it is actually quite a lot of work, and we've covered an enormous amount of ground, quite literally, in the early part of this video. So I'm just going to take a little bit of moistened tissue. I don't want to introduce too much moisture to this because obviously it's very thin. Just dampen that a little bit and hopefully that will start to come off. I'm just going to dry that out as best I can straight away with a little bit of tissue, and I'll bring you in for a bit of a tighter shot of that because from where I'm standing I can't see that crack at all. Okay, so that's the edge of the panel there, and you can just see the crack there that isn't glued, but the rest of it where it's glued down, I can't see it. In terms of gluing these up, it is quite straightforward. The one thing to remember though is not to put too much glue on. With this being kind of 0.5 millimeter, 0.6 of a millimeter thick, there isn't an awful lot to stop the glue coming through if it's too wet. So if you slap a load of glue on and then clamp these down, the risk you run is that it will actually push through the pores of the wood. It can also make the veneer wrinkle, which is definitely what you don't want. So quite sparing with the glue, decent amount of clamping pressure, and you should be absolutely fine. I'm really happy with the way that's gone. I think the figure in these is going to look stunning when the guitar is all put together and finished. And having this lighter wood on the top also gives me a lot of scope when it comes to the finishing. So very, very happy with that. There was a little bit of a break before I got this video out. I'll be back as usual in a couple of days' time with the next episode. So as always, smash that like button if you've enjoyed this, subscribe if you haven't already done so, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks a lot for watching. Bye bye.